ask me if we should be teaching a spiral curriculum, as Jerome Bruner outlined it, or whether we should be teaching in blocks. And I always feel that's actually a misleading question, because every scheme is a spiral curriculum, because no one only teaches addition once in a child's school career. You always revisit. The question is not whether it's a spiral curriculum or whether it's blocks, it's how fat is the spiral, how tightly is the spiral wound, how frequently are you revisiting. When I started teaching, that we obviously taught in blocks, and you kind of taught addition in September and October, and you taught subtraction in November, and then coming up to Christmas you taught shape because of stars, and then in January, February you taught multiplication, and March you taught division, and then you taught fractions, and then as you came into summer you taught wet maths, and that was measures. And we did operate a block curriculum. That's how I came into teaching. The problem was that when you came back to teach addition again, the children had forgotten it. They hadn't remembered what happened in September. And that is the big problem. How often do you revisit these topics? How frequently do you come back to them to bed them in, to make sure they are there? And in England, we actually have a bit of an issue here, because in England, our children are not dreadfully good at remembering. Memory is kind of our short suit, and that's partly because children are not doing any memorisation outside the four walls of our school. And so therefore, English children do tend to forget things. We know this. And there is something called a forgetting curve. Children don't forget in a linear way. They forget quite a lot to start with, and then it starts to tail off. The forgetting curve shows us this, and the evidence is that one needs to revisit before children have forgotten it all. And that makes sense, because, you know, if you're having to teach something again and they've forgotten it all, you've got to reteach, and that's not sensible. So we need to revisit before children have forgotten it all. However, we do also need to teach things long enough so that they bed in. So how do we cope with this? Well, we have to be intelligent about it. We have to revisit those things which are key, those things that if you don't have them, they contaminate the rest of your maths. So we need to revisit those key things on a regular basis before children have had a chance to forget them. Some things do not need revisiting as frequently. They are things that don't contaminate the rest of your maths, and they don't need to be revisited quite so often. So we need to be intelligent about the spiral. It's not a question of spiral or blocks. It's in question of being intelligent about how you do the revisiting and which things you revisit frequently. On Abacus, we have tried to take an intelligent approach to this, and we've also tried to allow for flexibility, because only a teacher can say how frequently they need to revisit something and how long they need to spend on it with their particular class. And it may not be the same from year to year. And so we've tried to say, first of all, we will revisit, and secondly, we will make sure that those things that are completely key are bedded in. They are really revisited sufficiently and taught in sufficient depth that they bed in.